"It's Will's way. Don't make trouble," he said. Hannah stared at the moon. Tomorrow they'd be going to Grandpa Dan's for the next Seder. At least there would be 3 cousins her own age. All boys, but that couldn't be helped. And they'd get to sit at the kitchen table away from the grown-ups. And Grandpa Will wouldn't be there shouting and making a scene. Only Grandpa Dan. Sweet, gentle, silly Grandpa Dan, who told stories in between the readings and said things like, "How do I know? I was there." Beside her, Aaron was moving restlessly, getting ready to ask the second question. With the yarmulke covering his fair hair, he looked like a miniature Grandpa Will. Hannah almost laughed aloud, remembering what Rosemary had asked at her first and only holiday visit. "Why do they wear those beanies?" Aaron's hands shook, and a page in the Haggadah flipped over by itself. Hannah reached out and smoothed it back for him, and he smiled up at her gratefully. He had the greatest smile, Hannah thought. He won't need braces. "Stop worrying," she mouthed at him. At her urging, he plunged into the second question, chanting the Hebrew perfectly because he'd memorized it. But when he looked down at the book to read the English translation, he stumbled over the word herb, pronouncing the H. Uncle Sam snorted, and Aaron stopped, mortified. He looked around the table. Everyone was smiling at him. It was clear that he'd made some silly mistake, but he didn't know what it was he'd done. He turned helplessly to Hannah. "Herb," she corrected with a whisper. "Don't pronounce the H." He nodded gratefully and started on the English again, finishing too loudly and in a rush, a sure sign he was unhappy. "On all other nights we eat vegetables and herbs of all kinds. Why on this night do we eat bitter herbs especially?" Why indeed, Hannah wondered. Since they're so disgusting. Rosemary gets to eat jelly beans and I get to eat horseradish. It isn't fair. She realized suddenly that she'd spoken the last words out loud, and everyone had heard. Embarrassed, she stared down at her hands, but her anger at the injustice continued. "Of course it isn't fair," whispered Aunt Eva to her. "But what has fair to do with it?" She smiled, and to break the tension, started singing Dayenu in her strong, musical voice. The rousing, repetitive song carried them all along, even Hannah's mother, who was tone-deaf. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Hannah knew it meant it would have been enough. But she suddenly felt that nothing was enough except to get out of that room and that Seder in which nothing fair or fun was happening. And then she remembered the wine. That, at least, was new. When the Seder began again, she would get another glass of watered wine. For the first time, she was being allowed to drink along with the grown-ups. "Let Hannele join in the toasts for real," Grandpa Will had said before the Seder had begun. "Now, Poppy," Hannah's mother protested. "She's only 12. 13, Hannah said. Eva had patted her hand. "And when my sister Eva was 13, what she would have given for a little glass of watered wine," Grandpa Will had begun. It was the same kind of argument he used for everything. He never had to finish the sentence, for no one could withstand the promise of guilt. "All right, Poppy." Grandpa Will had smiled, turning to Eva. "See? They can't keep her a baby forever." Babies, like Aaron, had to make do with grape juice. Hannah had been grateful to her grandfather for that, and she discovered with the very first toast that she liked the sweet, cloying taste of the wine, even though it made her head buzz. "Hannah!" Aaron tugged on her sleeve, and his eyes were full of mischief. "It's time." Time? For a moment she thought he meant